Hey there, everyone. It's Anthony. Happy to have you back for a breakdown of UFC Fight Night Sandhagen versus Font in Nashville this weekend. Looks like a good card. I mean, we got some awesome fights here to break down coming up Saturday. Nick, happy to have you join me as always. How do you feel about this Fight Night card?
Good man. Obviously, we missed doing a video for the pay-per-view last week because we were on the beach. So making up for it this week, but it is a really strong card. It's not like we're going through one of these garbage cards. This is going to be in front of a live crowd in Tennessee. They haven't had a card in a while. Pretty fun main event. A lot of interesting fights that actually feature a lot of quality fighters. So I'm looking forward to breaking it down with you for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this card. A lot of good talent, a lot of good betting spots. We'll look first at the main event, which is going to be a catchweight fight, 140 pounds. Corey Sandhagen taking on Rob Font. This main event coming together on a bit of short notice, with Sandhagen originally scheduled to face Umar Nurmagomedov. That fight not coming together, as well as Font's bout with Song Yadong in Boston. Um, Coming apart. So now we match these two up, have them go 5 rounds in the main event today. Obviously, the advantage to Sandhagen, knowing he was going 5 rounds here when Font was only scheduled to fight for three. Font also having an abbreviated camp with 2 more weeks planning to train for that bout with Song Yadong. He's going to be at a disadvantage here. Largely we're going to see these two in a striking fight. Font's a great boxer. He uses his jab well. He's great at stringing combinations together, but when it comes to overall striking, Sandhagen is better. He's more technical. He's way more advanced, and the different techniques that he's able to throw. His ability to mix in the knees, his ability to get in and out of the pocket much faster than his opponents. I think it's going to be a key here against Fawn, who's rather flat-footed in his approach. Somebody who is really in that boxing style, hands first, and not coming with nearly as many kicks or dynamic movements as someone like Sandhagen. He's largely going to be, if walking forward, eating a lot of counters from Sandhagen. And, if on the defensive, we could see him taking, another beating here. So I think Font's a very good fighter. I think he's certainly shown great performances as of late. But Sandhagen is one of the best in this division, and in a fight where he's not going to have to deal with any grappling from his opponent, I think he's going to cruise to a victory. Swelling now from a -300 to a -340 to this point. I think he's a clear side here. I think he probably gets a finish up Font in a fun striking war.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I like Corey here. It's kind of like two limbs versus eight to me. I mean, Sandhagen really developing his Muay Thai, throwing more elbows. We see him training with guys like Superlek, just outstanding Muay Thai strikers over one championship and things like that. So, like you said, Font, one of the better boxers in the division, maybe in the UFC, but very traditional, pretty heavy on that lead leg, mostly just throwing punches, working well behind that jab, as you indicated. But yeah, I mean, you pretty much already highlighted it. It's just a very dynamic MMA striker against more of a traditional boxer. And we've seen in their recent results, like not to play the MMA math game, but they both recently fought Marlon Vera. Vera knocked out Font with some big kicks, a lot of forward pressure, things like that. And Sandhagen's movement, the constant switching his stances, just the weird angles he's throwing strikes from, moving in and out of range, things like that. He dominated Vera. So again, don't want to play too much MMA math, but they do have that common opponent in their recent results. The other thing too, like you mentioned, neither of these guys very likely to grapple, but we have seen Sandhagen mixing that in more frequently lately. If there are close rounds, I think he's more likely to secure a takedown late and win those on the scorecards, as we did see in that recent Vera fight. And yeah, another thing, he prepared for 5 rounds against Umar Nurmagomedov. Certainly that would have been a grueling fight where he's defending a lot of takedowns, but his cardio, which is never an issue for him anyway, is going to be at a peak here. Really, really do like Corey in this matchup. But yeah, the one thing on Sandhagen, he is sometimes over eager to just stand in the pocket and swing. I think in a matchup like this, that could be dangerous. That would be Font's maybe one path to victory, would be maybe to catch him with something if they're fighting in a phone booth. But I don't know. I think the likelihood of that is pretty narrow. Sandhagen's never been KO'd. Font never KO'd, but dropped many, many times recently. I think I'm with you. I do like the inside the distance here. I think you're getting close to a plus 200 compared to the minus 300 we're looking at on the money line. I'll be tying Sandhagen into most of my parlays. I think he's probably the safest bet on this card. And given the high level nature of that matchup, that certainly is telling because Font is no slouch at all. But I love the matchup for Sandhagen here. Yeah, he's the pick. Very clearly, I think Font will be competitive early. And like I said, as long as Sandhagen doesn't stand in that phone booth, though, and just play boxing, I think he's going to pull out the win here. It's the more dynamic striker. And like I led off this description, it's kind of 8 limbs against 2 in many ways. So Sandhagen should get it done.
Yeah, I was even leaning him, you know, in the initial matchup against Nurmagomedov. You know, he's good, man. I'm with you. I think he's one of the better bets on this fight card, top to bottom. Moving top to bottom, we will look at the co-main event next. This is a women's strawweight bout with Tatiana Suarez fighting Jessica Andrade. You know, sitting minus 400, but now closing to minus 360 some places is Suarez. Undefeated, excellent wrestling. You know, came back from quite the hiatus her last time out and got the win, submitting Montana De La Rosa. Just elite when it comes to her ground game, her top pressure, her wrestling, what she's able to do on the offensive when grappling. And you know, this matchup against Andrade is probably going to be one that favors her. We were going to see Suarez against Verna Jandiroba in the spot today, but Andrade stepping up, taking this on somewhat of short notice. We've just seen her in positions before on the ground where she's not able to get up, she's not able to defend, and I see those are the positions she's going to find herself in this matchup. Erin Blanchfield comes to mind very recently, doing that to Andrade, finishing her inside of the first 2 rounds, just dominant on the mat. And now moving down to strawweight, well, Andrade has the power advantage over just about everyone in this division. I don't see a cut down to 115 doing much to assist in her takedown defense, especially against a grappler of this high caliber. So while I love Andrade most of the time, while I've backed her as a dog plenty of times before, as a favorite plenty of times before, this is just a brutal matchup stylistically, in my opinion, and I think she's going to have a very tough time here. I think Suarez is going to, you know, spend a majority of this fight controlling Andrade on the mat.
Yeah, I'm with you. Suarez going into her last fight against De La Rosa was kind of like a boogie woman. I mean, she is an Olympic level wrestler, borderline, certainly one of the best grapplers on the roster, certainly on the women's roster. And yeah, Andrade recently, she's shown that hole in her game, like you mentioned. I don't know. I feel like the line is a little bit wide. It's just strange to see Andrade plus 280 plus 300 against anyone on the feet. She is the much better striker. Suarez really just kind of striking as a means to get to her grappling. So if she's having trouble scoring those takedowns early, it could get ugly quick. But at the same time, I don't think she will have that issue. And the thing about Suarez, if she doesn't score that first takedown, she's going to pursue another. She averages more than 6 per 15 minutes. Andrade, 73% takedown defense in the UFC, but that's over a very long career. I will say I was a bit surprising at the age of these two. Suarez is actually the older fighter, which is a bit baffling. But when you look at the records, I mean, Andrade has more losses than Suarez has fights. And like you said, I think stylistically, they're really trying to just get Suarez to this title shot as quickly as possible, while she does still have that rub on her name. And yeah, she didn't look as good as I hoped she would against De La Rosa, if we're being honest. She did get that guillotine win late in that fight, but I do think De La Rosa is a better wrestler, especially up a weight class, than what we're going to see from Andrade here. So yeah, tricky matchup. I do think the line's a bit disrespectful, just given Andrade's resume, who she's beaten. But stylistically, I do think Suarez has to be the favorite here. I do expect her to get it done, likely by submission as well. So yeah, I'm on Suarez here. Don't love the price, but I do think she's certainly the rightful favorite. Really tough matchup for Andrade stylistically.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm going to be too involved at that price either. You know, when you're getting the same line as we are someone like Sandhagen, it makes sense to tie him into more parlays than risking it here with the women's flyweights. Moving on next, we have a light heavyweight matchup, the featured bout with Kennedy and Jezekwu, favored minus 165 over the underdog Dustin Jacoby. Curious your thoughts on this matchup, which way you're leaning.
Yeah, to me, this is one of the tougher fights on the card to call, and we kind of see that in the price. I mean, we got Kennedy up to a minus 150, 160 favorite on some books. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar. Two guys with length for the division, both really talented strikers. Obviously, Jacoby has the glory kind of credentials on his resume. Kennedy, who's made dramatic improvements over his last few fights, coming up 3 straight wins via finish, which is great to see. So it seems like two fighters headed in different directions. We got Jacoby coming off 2 losses. We got Kennedy coming off 3 wins. But when you dig a little bit deeper into those, I mean, Jacoby lost that fight to Khalil Roundtree. I thought he won. In that last fight where I backed Jacoby as an underdog against Osman Mirzakhanov, he was actually in that fight late. He just chose to try to grapple rather than going for the KO late in that fight. He could have gotten the win there too, and this could be a very different fight coming in, at least talking about the price that we're looking at. So I'm still honestly torn on this one. Kennedy, the better athlete, 4 years younger, going to be the quicker fighter, especially early. Don't really consider either of these guys to be power punchers, but in this division, I mean, obviously anyone can score a KO at any time. I think the X factor is probably Kennedy's grappling. He has shown a willingness to lean on that part of his game more and more frequently lately. And against someone like Jacoby, that's probably the clearest path to victory. So I'm leaning Kennedy right now, but I do want to spend a little bit more time on this one because I do think the line, while it's not really wide, I'm a little bit surprised that it's so slanted towards Kennedy. And I think a lot of that's just people looking at recent results, but you got to kind of dig a bit deeper into those too. And I mean, like I said, I think Jacoby's not getting enough credit. But is Kennedy getting a little bit too much? I mean, he looked pretty shaky early in the Devin Clark and the Ion Cutelaba fights. The win over Roberson really does nothing for me. So while I do see Kennedy as the rightful favorite, I do want to spend a little bit more time on this one. I'd like to see him lean on his grappling. I think that presents the clearest path to victory here. But yeah, two pretty talented guys, similar builds, both very tall. Kennedy is going to have a 7-inch reach advantage, but he doesn't necessarily use it that well. I think his best striking actually takes place in the clinch most of the time, which is where he could have an advantage in this fight as well. But Jacoby does a good job kind of keeping guys off and staying out of that position. So it's a very, very good matchup. Kudos to the UFC for putting this one together. I think it'll be a fun fight. Would it shock me if they both start point fighting each other and it gets kind of ugly and it's close? No. And if that is the case, I'll probably want to be on the underdog. But again, this fight deserves a lot of time. It deserves a lot of research because these are two guys who are very similar in their abilities, at least on the feet. So if I were to know Kennedy wanted to execute a grappling heavy game plan, I'd probably favor him here. But yeah, tough one to call for me.
It is a tough one to call. For both guys, I feel like it's a difficult stylistic test. As you said, for Jacoby, those past 2 losses by decision were very close. We could very well be looking at a man on, a 10-fight winning streak if, a few minutes go a different direction. But yeah, I mean, I would say Jacoby is the more technical striker. I feel like there is value on him as the underdog here. It's just scary to back him against this Kennedy that we've been seeing as of late. Not only his ability to, stand, the great defense on the feet has always been there, but his ability to return shots now, he's looking way more fluid in his striking. When he first entered the UFC, it really wasn't a great product on the feet, but Kennedy is moving much better. And the way that he's getting after these takedowns certainly makes him, live in the spot to just hold down Jacoby. If Jacoby is going to be the faster, more technical kickboxer, taking him off his feet, winning minutes that way, certainly something he could do as the bigger and taller man. But yeah, I see the value on Jacoby here. At worst, this is a pick 'em fight, and getting plus 140 right now, he's going to be the side for me. I've been backing him a lot. I've been on Kennedy a lot as of late as well, and again, proving to be profitable. I just find Kennedy winning a lot of these fights inside of the distance, and I don't see a super clear path for him beating Jacoby that way. If this is going to go to decision, if there's going to be a lot of minutes, on the feet striking here, I think Jacoby's probably going to be the one to win them. And I like that this is in front of a live crowd too. I mean, sometimes Kennedy very slow early, takes his time, seems to thrive in the apex, but this is a matchup I could see, as these two begin to slug it out, Jacoby just getting the edge, staying ahead, and using his better footwork and mobility on the feet to get the win over Kennedy. But very close fight, tough one to call.
Certainly.
All right, we will move on next to a featherweight bout with Diego Lopez taking on Gavin Tucker. Lopez gaining some steam as the week here continues, starting around -130, now up to a -175. I believe that to be warranted, just with what we've seen out of Tucker, now 37 years old. He was a guy always known for his fast hands, effective out of the southpaw stance, but as he tends to age, his hands are looking a bit slower and slower. I find him to have the advantage striking still in this matchup against somebody like Lopez, but the jiu-jitsu out of Lopez is legit. He's not only a great jiu-jitsu coach, but also a bit more credentialed in his wrestling than some may think. Tucker in this spot is going to oftentimes look to wrestle opponents, but facing Lopez, I find that to be a losing proposition. I'm not sure if he's going to be shooting in, if anything at all, in this fight. Where normally wrestling is something that gets him an edge over opponents, but in this spot, Lopez is too dangerous with his submissions for Tucker to play that game. He's going to be looking to stand and strike, and I don't think Lopez is going to allow it. I find him likely to get the win over Tucker, just being a bit, more efficient, making decisions and executing his grappling here in the spot. Tucker can counter wrestle as well. He probably will get up, get out of some spots. I'm not necessarily saying he gets submitted. I just think Lopez has the edge when this fight hits the mat, and he should be able to outwork 37-year-old Gavin Tucker, who I have never been very high on.
Yeah, so I actually do like Gavin Tucker a decent amount in this matchup. I mean, the issue with backing him, though, is just that it's been so long since we've seen him in action. Obviously, he had that fight against Dan Ige where he got starched. He's been out since then. So I think I need to spend a little bit more time kind of researching, seeing where he's at. A few things in this matchup, though. I mean, first and foremost, everyone's high on Lopez coming off that Evloev fight, myself included. Took a fight on short notice against a top 10 opponent, looked excellent, almost finished Evloev multiple times. Really, really did look good in there. But yeah, I think stylistically, I mean, Tucker has never been submitted. He's a good wrestler. He has good top pressure, really good cardio, which I think could be a difference here. And the thing about Lopez is, as credentialed as his jiu-jitsu is, we haven't seen him win a fight via submission since 2021 for Lux Fight League. So it's really been a while since he has leaned on that part of his game, or at least scored finishes using that part of his game. I mean, we saw him on Contender Series against Joe Anderson Brito, obviously a very tough opponent. But yeah, Brito really did a good job kind of controlling him. I mean, Lopez was throwing up a lot of submissions, similar to what we saw against Evloev. But in both those fights, we saw that wrestling is something that can be used to maybe neutralize him. If I knew Tucker was in perfect condition, I don't mind the age as much as I mind the layoff. I'd feel pretty good about backing him as an underdog here at this price. I think we're getting a lot of recency bias on Lopez here coming off that loss just because he looks so good against Evloev. But I think stylistically that matchup really just kind of lended to him in that specific spot. Again, on short notice, Evloev not necessarily prepared for that type of jiu-jitsu. And also, I actually think Tucker at boxing range is kind of similar to Evloev. And I don't know that I would call him the better striker. That seems a little bit ridiculous. But statistically, I mean, near 60% defense on the feet is excellent. Going to put out maybe twice as much volume as we're going to see out of Lopez here. Lopez going to be the bigger fighter in there as well. So I think that is another reason I'm not rushing to the betting window to get on this underdog. But I want to spend a little bit more time digging into this one, see where Tucker's at. If he's been training really hard, fighting for this comeback, embarrassed by the Ige loss, and the extra time off was just so he could really round up different parts of his game, then I think he's a very live underdog here and a good value bet. But yeah, I don't know. And like you said, I do think Lopez is dangerous. I thought he was underrated coming into the Evloev fight, but I wonder now if he's a little bit overrated coming off a loss. And as good as his submission grappling is, we haven't seen that out of him in a long time. And Tucker's never been submitted. So I don't know. It's like, what's the path? Is he going to control position on the mat? I'm not sure. If he doesn't get the submission, is he going to be able to score a KO on the feet? Probably not. He's not the better striker. So I'm just having trouble with the line, but like I said, I mean, all that being said, I'm still not rushing to the window to back Tucker just because of the long layoff. So going to spend a little bit more time on this one. I think stylistically it actually does kind of cater to the underdog here, but this is not a fight I have much confidence in either way, at least not yet.
Yeah, and I mean, the lean out the gate was Lopez for me, but as this line inflates, it's probably not a bet that I'll be making either. You could keep waiting on Tucker, perhaps get a better number as Saturday comes around. But yeah, certainly a tough fight. Not really sure what we'll be seeing for the outcome there.
Mhm.
Moving on next, light heavyweight, low level, not the best matchup here on the main card with Alexa Kamara making his return against Tanner Boser on a 2-fight losing streak. I mean, Bozer's a little better. Certainly the more experienced mixed martial artist. The losses of late, Ian Kudalaba finished his last time out. Not a great look. Down at light heavyweight, he has losses to a lot of high level heavyweights, low level heavyweights on his recent resume as well. But I feel like in general in this matchup against Kamer, we're going to see a better product out of Boser. I feel like he's got the faster hands and he's going to be the more efficient boxer in this matchup. While Kamara does do most of his best work there on the feet, he is going to have a little bit of an issue here with Boser when it comes to striking in the pocket. And I also think Boser is going to be able to impose his size a bit in this matchup with Kamer, who is also not the biggest for light heavyweight, who has also had experience fighting above light heavyweight like Tanner Boser with not great success. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this matchup. This is really not one I am excited to watch. But what do you got here? I mean,
Yeah.
Boser.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm leaning Boser as well. Obviously, he has not had much success in the UFC. I think coming in, a lot of people were pretty high on him as a heavyweight because he was good at moving, throws a lot of leg kicks, puts out a lot of volume, definitely quick for that division. But he couldn't defend any wrestling at heavyweight, losing fights to guys like Alir Latifi, Rodrigo Nascimento, not the highest level of competition. And now he's taking on another guy I don't consider to be super high level, but I'm not sure Kimura is going to be looking to wrestle much. This is a guy who trains with Stipe, pretty good striker, pretty crisp boxing. Not as much volume as Boser, certainly not as diverse in his strikes either. And yeah, I do think Boser is going to push the pace here. I think he's going to be the one moving forward. Kimura, long layoff for him as well, similar to what we were talking about with Tucker. But we do know that Alexa Kimura's layoff is because of injuries. I think he had multiple surgeries. Something else I want to dig a little bit deeper into with us recording this video on a Thursday. But yeah, I'm leaning Boser here, but it's like, how can you put money on either of these guys? They really haven't been all that impressive. Boser's been super disappointing for the most part, just a very stubborn guy. His whole career at heavyweight, people were telling him to move down. He was saying no. He finally did it. He's saying, oh no, this is what I thought of. This was my idea. I don't know if it's trolling, but he's just a guy I really liked his personality when he came into the UFC, kind of becoming super cringy and tough to get behind, but Kimura, just really nothing all that impressive out of him. I mean, he had that split decision win over Negramanu, which was a very close and ugly fight. The win over William Knight, who is proven to be a complete bust. And then Justin Ledet. I mean, just really no quality wins under his name. And I mean, as well, Boser does have that KO of OSP, the shell of who he was in his prime. So we're dealing with a super low level matchup, one that probably shouldn't be on the main card. I want to dig a little bit more into Kimura's injuries, see what was wrong with him. If we get some word out of an interview or something that he knows he needs to wrestle here and he's going to really lean on that part of his game, maybe I'll back him as an underdog. But in a fight I expect to mostly take place on the feet, I do think Boser's a side. Just probably not a fight to get your money involved with either way, though.
Yeah, certainly a volatile matchup between two guys that certainly take losses here and there. We're moving on to a much better bout, in my opinion. Excited for the main card opener at lightweight with Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Ludovic Klein. This should be a fun one. Bahamondes sitting a -220 favorite over the +180 Ludovic Klein. I've been very high on Bahamondes. He has not disappointed. A 3-fight win streak as of late. Will kick over Roosevelt Roberts, really, strapped a rocket ship to his back. But thereafter, beating Zurong and beating Trey Ogden, really great striking, great kickboxer. I'm a big fan of his ability to walk forward and land strikes at the same time. His 8-inch height height advantage over Klein should be a big factor in this fight. Klein's somebody who, fights with a short reach out of the southpaw stance, great at getting inside, landing powerful shots, good kickboxing as well. I like the kicks out of Klein, but not as much as Bahamondes. Bahamondes is quicker, much more dynamic in his striking. I think this kid is very good. Klein's good as well, which is making me a bit hesitant to really pull the trigger and go big on Bahamondes in the spot. I find him to be one of the better bets on this card, but I mean, Klein as of late looked good in a draw against Jai Herbert, and then wins over Mason Jones and Devontae Smith. Some high-level lightweights and featherweight competition that he has really thrived against. So while I do find this to be a matchup, Bahamondes should be ahead. Klein's always dangerous. I think Bahamondes is going to be able to land, more offense throughout the course of 15 minutes if needed here. But also with these two throwing back and forth, they're both a bit susceptible defensively, not the best at covering up, and I see one or the other getting caught here. More than likely Klein at the end of the longer and more crisp strikes from Bahamondes, but should be a good fight. I like the Chilean a lot. Give me Bahamondes here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Bahamondes, not nearly as confident though, I don't think. First, we got to keep an eye on the weight. Bahamondes missed bad last time out. I think he weighed in at almost 160. That wasn't a catchweight fight, was it? But that doesn't appear to be a good thing. He's very big for the weight class, like you said. 6'3" for a lightweight is massive. But yeah, I just want to keep an eye on the weight cut, make sure he makes that clean. I do agree he's the crisper striker, the better striker. But I'm really not all that impressed by his recent wins. I don't rate Trey Ogden very high. Zhu Rong's already out of the UFC. Roosevelt Roberts just lost on The Ultimate Fighter. He lost the fight to Makdessi. So he has all the physical gifts. He has all the skills, very flashy. The kicks are amazing. But really, I mean, we're looking at the resume of a guy who has not really done all that much yet in the UFC. I know he's coming off 3 wins, but I do think he's a bit overrated. And then Klein on the other side, I mean, another guy who's kind of overrated coming into the promotion. Super impressive highlight reel, landing these crazy high kicks, knocking guys out. We haven't seen that at all at the UFC level out of him. I do think he has a little bit of grappling upside here. We see Klein average just over a takedown per 15 minutes. And I think if you can't strike with a guy as long as Bahamondes, maybe you try to put him on his back. I don't know that he does that here. I do favor Bahamondes. I think he's the better athlete. I like his upside as a fighter in his career better, 3 years younger. But again, I think he's a little bit overrated. I also think Klein's a little bit overrated, though, so those two kind of cancel out for me. I do probably land on Bahamondes. I don't think he finishes Klein on the feet here, though. Klein very durable, pretty decent defensive striking. But I do think just off volume, off pressure, off just like eagerness to win the fight, I think I favor Bahamondes. But if Klein can make it dirty and boring, we could be looking at a split decision at the end of this one. And yeah, who knows how these judges are going to be in Tennessee. So I lean Bahamondes. I think he gets it done. Don't necessarily love the price as it sits around -200. And it continues to inflate. I'm seeing -240 at some books now. That just feels too wide to me. But I do think he's the rightful favorite here. I do think he has the athletic gifts. It's just looking at the resume. I mean, I just don't want to overrate him too much coming off wins over guys that are no longer in the promotion.
Yeah, and it's the way that he's winning that's convinced me. I'm a big fan of his. It was a 160 catch weight the last time out. Did not miss weight.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, I think he's good in the spot, and for those watching, I would recommend him paired with Sandhagen, a near even money parlay. That will be the end for the main card, again, starting 9 p.m. this Saturday. The prelims begin at 6 p.m. On Saturday and conclude with a good matchup at bantamweight between Kyler Phillips and Paoni Barcelos. Barcelos getting knocked out stiff his last time out, facing Umar Nurmagomedov. Not the best product as of late in general. Not even that knockout that's got me a bit concerned. But I mean, the loss to Timur Valiev, the loss to Victor Henry, guys that were able to outwork and outvolume Barcelos and do the better work on the feet. Something one would expect to be the case with Kyler Phillips here if he is his old self. Kyler Phillips on quite a bit of a hiatus, not fighting since February of 2022. A suspension for a positive test of Ostarine, and I'm not a big fan of betting drug cheats in MMA. If you really need it, it's It's not the best, I feel like it's an
Same
issue
thing your
for.
boy O'Malley tested for in the same camp.
Well, he had a tainted supplement. Yeah, I wouldn't. I
Oh
wouldn't
yeah, is
worry.
it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Kyler said too. A lot of tainted supplements down at that
Well, listen, it's
MMA
called the
lab, and I
lab.
think it's funny. It's called the MMA lab, and they're all testing positive.
It's the lab for a reason.
They're
Yeah.
doing science out there.
Exactly. But yeah, Phillips. I mean, we should be able to see him outwork Barcelos here, land more shots over the course of a 15-minute fight. And as this fight gets late, Barcelos isn't taking damage that well. And if Kyler Phillips gets a few good shots in over the course of round 1, over the course of round 2, I think he's going to be the better fighter come round 3. I think he's going to be able to put a pace on Barcelos. And while Barcelos is very dangerous, is a very, very good striker, I think Kyler Phillips is going to be able to, use his speed and, athletic edge to get the victory here. Barcelos 36 years old at this point. Not great for a bantamweight. Not great backing a guy like that, seeing him laid out stiff his last performance. So I got Kyler Phillips, but not super confident as he returns from suspension.
Yeah, this one's tricky for me because if we knew which version of Phillips or Barcelos we were getting, it would probably be a much easier fight to break down. But you already brought up the Osterine. I mean, anytime a fighter is coming off a USADA suspension, you got to raise a few red flags. Phillips, a guy who's found a lot of success late in fights, really keeping pressure on opponents. And if Osterine does anything, I think it does help one's cardio. Not a doctor, certainly don't know too much about any of these performance-enhancing drugs. But what I do know is that that's kind of the narrative that's been kind of put out there by a lot of people this week. So it'll be interesting to see how Phillips looks. Barcelos too. I mean, he did get starched by Umar, but Umar was supposed to headline this card. Umar is a guy who a lot of people have pegged as a future champion in this division. So yeah, I'm not going to get too hard on Barcelos for that loss. What I will get hard on him for, though, is just his general inconsistency. Did not look good in that fight against Victor Henry at all, just out-volumed on the feet. Looked much better against Trevin Jones, a fight I thought he should have been able to finish on the mat, though. Barcelos, very underrated grappler, good jiu-jitsu, doesn't really choose to use it much, though, which is a bit of a concern. So I don't know. There's just a lot of question marks for me on this one. Which version of Barcelos are we going to get? Which version of Phillips are we going to get? I think both of them at their best. I mean, at their best, Barcelos being 36, at his best for a 36-year-old, I would probably slightly favor Phillips. But yeah, as this line continues to widen, I mean, if Phillips's cardio is not going to be what it has been so far in his UFC run, then maybe Barcelos is live as a dog here if he can get that grappling going. But that being said, he just never really chooses to lean on it, so it's tough to back Barcelos as an underdog. I don't know. I'd probably just sit back and watch this one. I'm currently leaning with Phillips. But yeah, I mean, the failed test is certainly a cause for concern. A few years ago, I'd probably back Barcelos here with confidence in this type of matchup, but a few years has passed, and that certainly doesn't favor the older fighter. So I like Phillips here. Do not like the price. Probably won't bet it. Yeah, really just tricky fight to call. There's a lot of question marks on both sides, but two highly skilled fighters should be a fun one.
Yeah, and I mean, I just say a closing point would be Phillips Jiu-Jitsu not too bad either.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, if these two hit the mat, there's going to be a distinct edge to Barcelos. But yeah, close fight. Not one I'm super confident on either side. Moving on now to a welterweight matchup between Jeremiah Wells and Carlson Harris. This is a fight I'm interested. I mean, now near pick'em, Wells just minus 120 at current, and I do like Harris in this spot. He's been somebody I've had my eye on since joining the promotion. I'm a big fan of him. His ability to on the feet use a bit of unorthodox attacks, big looping hooks with a lot of power to get to his opponents. Very aggressive in his striking, something that could also be said for Wells, who's rather explosive. And, when it only takes a few shots from Wells, Harris is going to be able to, put shots together with more effect, even though they carry, similar power behind them, not only in his hands, but in his kick, something I think he should have the edge over Wells with. And then when it comes to the grappling, I think Harris is, great in the spot as well. Wells has been known to, go after takedowns in certain spots, but Harris has an excellent body lock of his own, the ability to drag fights to the mat, at his leisure, especially given his size for a welter, right? And then also a great front headlock series, good front chokes. You know, we saw him pull off submissions before, you know, in the UFC by Anaconda, finishing Christian Aguilera. I think he's very live in the spot. You know, am upset I haven't hopped on already with the odds now closing. But Harris is going to be the pick for me. Not a super confident play, but I do like the edge of him over Wells. Harris is somebody I've backed plenty of times in the past, and Wells is somebody that, you know, I don't think super highly of. And then again, Harris, the only loss thus far in the UFC, coming to the undefeated Shavkat Rakhmonov. So certainly still could be a rather high ceiling for Harris. I believe in it. I'm going to take him in this spot to get the win.
Yeah, I mean, Harris is currently my lean as well, but I'll play a bit of a devil's advocate here just for the sake of the breakdown. I mean, Wells, I think, is a bit underrated as a grappler, training at a Renzo Gracie Philly. Doesn't always have the cleanest takedown entries, but he is very dangerous once his fights get to the mat. I would also give Wells the durability edge here. I mean, in two of Harris's losses, he was KO'd. That Shavkat fight and then one earlier in his career. Wells has never been finished. Yeah, both these guys pulling finishers, both on the mat and on the feet. This should be a car crash for however long it lasts. Wells did a good job pulling up that win against Summelsberger in his last fight. Made a lot of mistakes, though, and Summelsberger has kind of been on a skid. I don't think we're rating him as highly as we were earlier in his career. But to see Wells finish someone like Court McGee quickly, first one to crack that chin. I know it's been cracked since, but that was great to see. But then in the Blood Diamond performance, I mean, not securing the takedowns as easily as one might think. So it's just like, I don't know. We're getting an inconsistent fighter in Wells. Kind of feel the same way against Harris or about Harris. I mean, he looked good against Gooden. I thought he looked a little bit better than he did. Gooden taking that fight on very short notice. Both these guys 36 years old, so it's kind of crazy that this feels like a prospect versus prospect matchup. Both these guys certainly older for the division, but yeah, I think I'm leaning with Harris. I just, like you said, I like the kicks. I like the jiu-jitsu. I like the aggression more than anything. Wells kind of waiting to counter at times. But I am afraid maybe to back him aggressively here just because, like you said, Harris likes to throw those big hooks. That could present an opportunity for Wells to counter him and put him out. We have seen Harris KO before, so I'm siding with Harris just as value as the underdog, but it's not a confident play by any stretch. I can certainly see this fight going either way, but a very high-level fight for two 36-year-olds, and I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, these are two guys that I'd say are certainly under the radar, but should be a very good matchup. Looks to be on paper. Another fun one at featherweight, we will break down next. Billy Quarantillo returning to action to face Damon Jackson. Quarantillo a minus 170 favorite in this spot against a plus 145 Jackson. I do like Billy Q. I've had a pretty good read on him. The win over Alexander Hernandez, he looked very nice, but his last time out, ate a big knee from Edson Barboza early on in that fight, and you know, that was the end of his night there. Very, very good striker, Edson Barboza, very clean technical striker that caught the more high volume and, you know, pressure fighter in Billy Q. I think that pressure and high volume striking should pay better dividends here facing a guy like Damon Jackson, who, while he has some power on the feet, while he's effective from both stances, he's not as clean a striker and not somebody who could keep up with that sort of pace for a full 15 minutes striking. Jackson is one to, you know, chase a takedown or two through over the course of a 15-minute fight and look to utilize his grappling a bit. Also good at locking the body, getting to the back of opponents on occasion, and, you know, winning minutes any way that he can. You know, Jackson's looked better as of late, but is coming off a loss. His last performance, finished by Dan Ige. You know, I think Quarantillo is going to have the edge in this spot for as long as it is standing, and I don't see Jackson really, you know, chasing takedowns over and over and over against a guy like Billy Q. So I think Quarantillo is going to outstrike him quite considerably in this spot and win this fight, probably by a judge's decision, but should be a good one. I mean, Jackson's always live. Jackson always brings the fight. He never quits on himself, and you know, he moves forward as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I faded Billy Q last time out against Edson. That was a nice little payday on that one, but This matchup definitely favors Quarantillo, in my opinion. Jackson probably the better grappler here, but I don't think the gap in jiu-jitsu is wide enough that he's going to be able to finish Quarantillo on the mat. Not a guy we've seen submitted frequently or at all, really. And yeah, just the much, much better striker Billy is. Not entirely technically sound, but he puts out a ton of volume, averaging almost 6 significant strikes landed per minute, compared to Jackson, who is under 3. So just volume on the feet alone, we're going to see a lot coming out of Quarantillo. And maybe Jackson secures a takedown or two early here, but we've seen him fading later in fights, which kind of plays into Quarantillo's strengths. A guy that does a good job weaponizing his cardio. We've seen him with multiple third-round finishes. Really does a good job kind of pouring things on once he weathers that early storm. Saw that against Alex Hernandez after he took a bunch of big shots in that one. Quickly turned that around and then finished his opponent. So I see similar here, and I actually think we don't talk about live betting much. But if you are able to bet a fight live, I can see Jackson winning the first round here. Billy kind of a slow starter, always likes to kind of take things slow at first and then put it on his opponents. And Jackson kind of the opposite, kind of a quick starter, guy who we see start to fade. So if you want to be safe, I think Jackson's win conditions probably early, like we saw against Sabatini. And we saw him fade in that Argueta fight. We saw him fade in other wins as well. So I like Quarantillo maybe via third round finish. Could see him winning this inside the distance late. Jackson, dangerous early, dangerous enough that I'm not hammering Billy Quarantillo bets here, but I do think he's the better fighter. I do think he has enough on the mat to stay safe, and he is going to be a league or two ahead of Jackson on the feet here. So I'm with you on Billy Q. But yeah, might be a better live spot than it is to bet before the fight starts.
I think it's a fair price. I think we've seen Billy Q price a little better in spots like this before, but I still think minus 170 isn't a terrible number.
It's not bad. No, I agree.
Yeah. All right, moving on next to a flyweight matchup. Jake Hadley facing Cody Durden. Hadley sitting at current minus 190 in this spot against Durden, the underdog. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have disrespected Durden for almost the entirety of his UFC career. This is a guy who is a very good kind of American-style wrestler for the division. It's rare we see flyweights that can maintain top pressure just because these guys are so light. Most of them can bench their body weight and a half, but we have seen that Durden's one of these guys that can keep top pressure. We saw it in his wins over Moda and Johnson. Good job securing takedowns, good job staying on top, good job engaging in grappling against opponents that don't necessarily want to. And in this matchup against Hadley, though, he's getting a guy who's probably going to be willing to grapple with him. I think Hadley is the more dangerous finisher on the mat. I certainly rate him as the better striker. And I do prefer him here on the money line. I am leaning Hadley to get it done, but it is by no means a confident play, just because I kind of have PTSD from backing Durden's opponents. Just a guy who can make it boring, can slow it down, can win fights on the scorecards, take the first 2 rounds, and just stay safe in that third and kind of coast to a decision. We see it time and time again. Personally, I maybe get to Hadley here. Like I said, I think he's the better striker. If he can keep this standing and he's not overly willing to engage in those grappling exchanges and scrambles, I think that's his clearest path. I think he's just the much better striker in this matchup. I just worry that he's going to be willing to engage in the grappling like we saw in his debut against Nascimento, where he ended up, he had his moments, but he kind of put himself in a hole going into scrambles he thought he'd win, kind of overrating his own grappling ability. So I worry about that a bit here as well. I'm probably going to back Hadley here, but by no means a confident play. I think stylistically it's a very interesting matchup, but if it's on the feet, Hadley's the better fighter. I just have continuously been wrong about Durden and his ability to kind of hold some of these guys down at a very low weight class. So I like Hadley. I think he gets it done. Am I confident? No, not at all.
It's a real tough spot. I mean, I think I'm going Hadley as well. I think you got to. Durden, I as well have been fading quite a bit throughout his tenure in the UFC. Right, exactly. It's just when it comes to Hadley, he is the better fighter on the feet. Durden's style on the feet is wonky. He's going to be eating shots from Hadley if these two are sending and striking. And if Durden's pressing these takedowns here, I mean, we've seen what Hadley's able to do with his jiu-jitsu, and I'd hope, Lightning could strike and he could catch a sub if these two are going to be hitting the mat 1 or 2 times. Durden normally knows how to score his takedowns and how to fight through, those submission attempts from the guys he's facing. facing. But Hadley is a very clean grappler. 5 submission wins to his credit, with just 10 pro wins total. Certainly billed as that high-level grappler as he was entering the promotion. And what we saw with the finish in the Carlos Candelario fight, not the highest level opponent, somebody who actually just retired, I think I saw in the headlines this morning. I think Hadley is still the spot, though. While Durden could wrestle him, make it look like the Nascimento fight, spend 10 minutes on top. I'll tear all my hair out. I really don't hope that's the case. I think Hadley's going to be able to get off good, clean strikes early. And again, he's dangerous with the subs. He could catch Durden if Durden is, exposing his neck when he's trying to drive Hadley into the mat. So, rightful favorite, 190. As it moves to 190, I go even less enthused about this spot, but I do think Hadley is the proper side. And next up, a featherweight matchup. We have Sean Woodson taking on Dennis Bazooka. -200 is Woodson here in a short notice booking. This is actually the 4th opponent booked to fight Woodson here on Saturday. Crazy, just fallout and visa issues and all of this. But now he's landed on Dennis Bazooka here to face a solid prospect, somebody training out of Cerro Longo in New York. And somebody who's looked very good in general, his career thus far. Well, the level of competition for Bazooka has not been very high at all. He has shown great effectiveness, utilizing his grappling, scoring takedowns as needed. Pretty good striking as well, when it comes to somebody with his limited experience. But compared to that of Woodson, I do not see him having the edge on the feet. Woodson's boxing is extremely crisp. He's been preparing for this fight to fight at least here Saturday the 5th for quite a while, whereas Bazooka is getting this call on just days' notice. Woodson's going to have his timing down. He's going to be able to get his boxing going early, benefiting from a 9-inch advantage in reach and 5 inches of height. He's going to keep Bazooka at the end of his punches and should effectively defend those takedown attempts as they come. Certainly it's a stylistic matchup that Bazooka could find a lot of success if these takedowns do land. So I'm certainly not rushing to bet Woodson at a -200 with, such a short notice booking here. But I do like him a lot. I think he has been exposed at points, knocked down a couple times his past time out even. But the boxing is there. His hands are crisp. He's able to put 10 punch combinations together. And, I like that against these lower level featherweight opponents. So I do see Woodson getting the win here on Saturday.
Yeah, make them as a surprise to some, but I'm on the other side of this one, I think. Woodson, -400 last time out against Luis Saldana, did not look good. I mean, he had his moments early, he had a couple moments late, but it was just a poor performance against a guy who I rate much lower than I do this new up-and-comer in Dennis Bazooka. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, Bazooka actually is a win on Contender Series. He has 2 fights on the Contender Series, 1-1. He hasn't lost a fight since 2020 when he felt the decision to Melsik Baghdasaryan. Very, very difficult striker, super powerful. So I don't think Woodson's likely to score a KO here. I know he has the KO over Colin England, but Bazooka's proven to be pretty durable. I do think he's the better grappler here, and maybe it doesn't come quick, but we do actually have some stats on him in the UFC because he has those 2 fights, and he is averaging 1.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. And I think if he get Woodson to the mat, work him into a body triangle, as we see with his teammate Aljamain Sterling, that's how Bazooka won his last fight via rear naked choke. To a pretty decent opponent in Abanakov, I think his name is, I don't know, Enzanov, but the kid did look pretty tough in there. So, I don't know, I think stylistically this wasn't Woodson's first choice. Like you said, this is his 4th opponent. I think the UFC gave him a list. I think it was Santos who he had last time, who had visa issues. That's who Woodson wanted. So he's got to check another name off that list, and now he's getting Bazooka here, who seems to be in shape, seems to be ready. I know he's in camp training with Aljo right now, so he should be pretty sharp here. I think he can pull off the upset. I'm going to keep my eye on the price. If the line narrows much more, I'm probably going to jump and try to catch it. I do expect steam to continue to move into Bazooka's favor just because of the stylistic discrepancies here. And maybe it's recency bias on my part, but Woodson just hasn't been as impressive as I think I wanted him to be coming into the UFC. Like you said, really long fighter for the division. Really interesting frame, but a guy who does a good job landing strikes, and he does have pop on the end of his punches. So good boxer, certainly the better boxer here, but this isn't a boxing match. I think Bazooka could probably ground him. Good enough of a striker with enough power to maybe make Woodson respect him, and I think that's going to be the key. I think Woodson presses forward here. Bazooka's going to have to maybe catch him with something on a counter. I don't think he's going to win the exchanges, but just get that respect, get enough respect that you can score that takedown, take your opponent to the mat here and maybe pull off that upset win. He's the younger fighter. I think he's going to be a guy who continues to make improvements out of an excellent camp. I think what we see is what we kind of get out of Woodson. Great striker, but maybe that's it. So I'm going to go with Bazooka here as the underdog. Probably going to jump on it soon if this line continues to close. But like you said, I mean, there are advantages for Woodson with the reach, the better boxer, not taking the short notice fight. But yeah, I just think the line's a little bit wide. And like I said, stylistically, I'm going to go with the underdog.
Big cage here in Nashville too. If he could really keep Bazooka on the end of his punches, something I think could benefit a couple of these taller fighters here today. But yeah, I mean, it should be a good matchup. I do like Bazooka. I like what I've seen out of him in Contender Series. He is a solid fighter. I just think Woodson still there's value at this number.
Yeah, that's fair.
And for our last fight, we have the flyweights, Ode Osborne, the underdog here, plus 160, facing a minus 190, Asu Almabayev, a very good prospect, somebody who is coming in with, quite the resume thus far. Facing a guy in Osborne who has fought higher than flyweight, and certainly somebody I want to see on the scales come Friday before I make a official prediction for this fight. As always, our write-up will be live on Dine Sports on Saturday to get an official prediction for each of these bouts. But this is one I'm really torn on because Almabayev has excellent grappling. He should be able to, take Osborne down and win this fight utilizing his wrestling and jiu-jitsu. But Osborne at 125, if making weight successfully, if rehydrating right, is scary. He has a lot of good size for this division and great power as well. We've seen his, finishes before, winning performance bonuses for, knockouts. And again, I think if he catches anyone at 125, he is a very live underdog. I just want to dig a bit more into Almabayev and see exactly the type of guys he's been fighting and effective against, because the grappling looks very good, and I would figure him to have the edge, wrestling here, facing Ode Osborne.
Yeah, I'm with you in several aspects of this matchup. I mean, I'm leaning on Almabayev, very good grappler, pressure wrestler, show he's willing to just win minutes and control fights on the ground. And I think that would be his path to victory here. But like you said, I think it's worth digging a little bit deeper into who he's doing these things against. Osborne going to be the better striker here, very dangerous on the feet, excellent athlete, does a good job moving in and out of range. Not the best takedown defense, but not terrible either, 72% of the UFC. So it's going to be interesting. I think if this fight takes place at striking range, Almabayev could fall behind, but that could also lead him into the wake-up call that he needs and say, okay, yeah, maybe don't stand on the feet with this guy, maybe get the grappling going. But at the same time, I mean, Osborne pretty inconsistent. We see the explosive finishes. We also see the lapses in judgment. That fight he got knocked out by Tyson Nam, where he just flew like a naked flying knee in the middle of nowhere and got kind of clocked out of the air like a baseball. It was pretty brutal. I don't know that Almabayev has the power to necessarily do that, but he does have a few KOs on his record. But whenever you get a debutant like this, especially someone he's not undefeated, but with someone with such an extensive record, you kind of have to dig a little deep. Why is this guy 17-2 and not yet in a major promotion, almost 30 years old? So yeah, there's some question marks around this fight here. I'm kind of leaning on Lobayev. Like I said, I think he can get the wrestling going, but at the same time, I mean, if the takedowns aren't as clean as maybe we're seeing on the highlight reels, Osborne keeps his fight standing. He's going to be very, very live for that upset. So, fight I could see going either way. If I'm going to spend a little bit more time on, you already gave the plug for the article on Saturday. I'm going to do the same. Tough fight to call. Should be a fun opener though, for a pretty fun card overall.
Yeah, Nashville should be a great fight night. As always, we appreciate those tuning in, viewing. We'll be live again for UFC 292 Boston this month. Should be a fun card as well. And as always, this weekend, next weekend, every weekend on Dine Sports, Saturday, you should see our article here breaking down each of these fights. So, Nick, thank you. Looking forward to UFC Fight Night Nashville and this awesome card on Saturday.
Likewise. Good luck and take care, everyone.